Name a player who has played better than you thought he would. You hater. You're a hater.
Yeah.
Now I want you to say who played better than you just wrote off.
I wrote off. No. We just talked about him briefly. Tashawn Gibson. I'm sorry. When Ward went down, I called him the single most important player to this 49ers defense. And the reason that I thought that going into the season was much like I thought Verrett was last year. That if they lost him, Hufanga is starting for his first year. I did think that he could hold it down, but I thought he would have to rely on Jimmy Ward kind of doing Jimmy Ward stuff. So when he went down and then street free agent Gibson comes in, I'm like, oh God, here we go. This is not going to be good. The defense, the back end of the defense is not going to hold up. Hufanga has been fantastic, no doubt about it. But a lot of that has to do with Gibson doing his part as well, allowing Hufanga to go do his thing. If Gibson was dog water, the way that I thought he might have been, Hufanga wouldn't be able to play the way that he's been able to play either. So I've got to give Gibson a lot of credit. I really do. I thought he would be horrible, and he wasn't.
Yeah, he has been good. I got more because I faded hella people on this on this team. Like Hufanga, man, I didn't get it at all. All the coaches were like, man, this dude is special. I'm like, I don't see it. And then in training camp, people were like, he was intercepting. I have to give him credit. He was intercepting Trey Lance in 11-on-11s. But I watched him in one-on-ones, and I'm like, man, you can't cover Ross Dwelley. Now, I really shouldn't be too hard on people for failing the Ross Dwelley test because no one can cover Ross Dwelley. That's what people don't understand. No one can cover Ross Dwelley. I think we learned that last week.
You can't stop Ross Dwelley. You can only hope to contain him.
You can only hope to contain him. It's true.
Yeah.
So he's really good, and I didn't see it. I was like, here's my thing. Here's my problem, and I want to learn from this. I'm trying to be completely transparent here. I didn't play football growing up. I played baseball and soccer. And so what I can do is I can look at athletes and be like, man, I can compare. You can compare numbers. I love Joe Williams, athlete. But athletes aren't necessarily football players. There's a difference, right?
Yeah.
Football players are, they like violence. They like pain. It's all this. I can't relate. I played freaking baseball and soccer. I didn't do that stuff. So Talanoa Hufanga is clearly a football player. They say this stuff, he's a football player. What does that mean? Well, him, not the best athlete. You put his raw numbers out there, it's like, yeah, 5th round pick. But there's a reason he was the Pac-12 player of the year, and there's a reason that he's a freaking baller in the NFL. Same thing with Chris Borland back in the day. That kind of stuff supersedes. And there are a lot of athletes who are off the charts that aren't necessarily good football players because they don't want the pain. I don't want the pain. People don't understand. I'm actually one of the greatest athletes of all time. People don't know this. But I just didn't want the pain, so I can't express it through football or any sport, actually. I just talk shit for a living. But I was a great athlete. Anyway, you know what I'm saying?
But nothing runs faster than your mouth. That's very true.
That's true. I got more players that I wrote off that I didn't that I want to give credit to. Banks. Aaron Banks. I watched him every day in one-on-ones. I was like, this dude is trash. Nope. He's actually hella good. I have to really reconsider my ability to assess offensive linemen because he's good. He's really good. Also, Charles Omenihu, I never wrote him off, but he's hella good.
He is really good.
I never really made a point of that while watching him in training camp. So those 3 guys are really good players. Didn't see it coming.
I think there's one thing that unfortunately will never ever show itself in any drill or a 40 time just unless you get to know these guys, and the NFL, quite frankly, doesn't put a lot of these guys out there for you to really know and understand and interview. But a player's mind is the most important thing. You look at Richard Sherman, he was not the best athlete, but his mental game was so on point. He was so smart, so prepared. He knew where to be at all times. He knew what was going to happen before it happened, and so it allowed him to play fast. Hufanga, I imagine, has to be a lot like that. And I know it's a big joke. Every practice, he's the first one. Guess who's here? Guess who's out first? It's Hufanga, and it's kind of the joke or whatever. But It's true. I think that right there is a picture into who he is, how much he cares about the game, and how much he puts into being a great football player.
I want to bring that. That's really a really good point. And like we look at these players, I think of these players as being, grown ups. They're kids. A lot of times, the ones coming into the league, and I try to relate. Like when I got to UCLA, I went to UCLA. I was very proud of that. It's a tough school to get into. I got really mediocre grades the first year and a half, and it really took a long time for me to figure out what it took to rise to the occasion at a really good school. It took me deep into my second year. So when you see a young guy like Talanoa in his first year gets all the little things about being a pro, like I didn't get that until my second year at UCLA. So it's impressive. And it speaks to a level of maturity that I didn't have. So that stuff is important. It means a whole lot. I get it. And I admire it.
Yeah, 100%. And that for me is why I try to talk about the psychology of the game as much as possible. I try to bring those things into because to me they're important, and it's impossible to fully know what's inside somebody. But that's also why I'm so big on Trey Lance. People are like, well, the mechanics and this, and it's always the physical. And to me, I'm looking up here. If I learn a lot about who you are mentally and you pass that test for me, I'm all in on you as a player. I think that you have something that most players do not have, and that's why I was and am so big on Trey Lance.
Well, also, you need to be able to project to the future. Like, people were all about Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence because of what they saw in college and what they felt would translate immediately. But now we're years out. We're 2-3 years out from that. And you're starting to look at Justin Fields. He's improving and starting to show that he can reach that ceiling that we all thought was very high. And now it's almost like maybe him and Trey Lance were the two most special quarterbacks from that class because, frankly, Trevor Lawrence has done jack shit. Mac Jones has done jack shit. And Zach Wilson looks the worst of the five. So I think it's kind of interesting. Like, with these quarterback evaluations, you really have to, like, think about what a guy can become, and really you're banking on your ability to bring out the best in an athlete. Can you do it, or are you insufficient?
Right? Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Nicholas, I got you. I'm looking right here. I got you first thing in the morning. I got you, bro. I will pep talk you and your mom, Kathy. I got you. I got you, man. First thing in the morning. Cameo's hella fun. 49ers Faithful says, what do you think about Samuel Womack? He made a nice play on special teams last week. You know what I think? He's going to be one of the next Niners players who was kind of buried as a rookie and then is dope as a second-year player. Him, Jordan Mason, Danny Gray might even be one of these guys too. Guys that you're like, oh, is he trash because he didn't play his rookie year? Kind of like Aaron Banks, kind of like Talanoa. And the next year, like, oh, no, the Niners are just super conservative about playing rookies.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you about Womack. I don't know about the other guys, but Womack, to me, even on special teams, he's always making a play. He's always he gets 2 or 3 snaps a game. You notice him at some point throughout that game. He puts his mark on the game every single time. So, yes, he's a rookie. It's going to take time to develop, but you are seeing the flashes of him being just an absolute playmaker, a lot like Talanoa Hufanga has been.
Jason says, once the Niners move on from Mike McGarbage can, sorry, Mike, do the Niners draft a right tackle or do they find a free agent? See, this is, I guess, one of my critiques of the McCaffrey trade, as I feel like it makes it difficult to do either one. If you could find a right tackle in round 5, by all means. But it's tough. And if you in free agency, I mean, I guess we'll have to see what this Amazon deal does for the cap, because right now they got a lot of money earmarked for 8 or 9 players, including Bosa.
Yeah, I don't know about free agency, but they probably need to find a center as well, and they're going to have to do it with some compensatory 3rd-round picks. That's where it's going to have to come from.
Not
so
easy,
let's hope they hit,
but not impossible once You see what they've done with Jake Brendel, and they do have a good offensive line coach. And maybe Jason Poe could learn how to snap because I think he's got potential.
For sure.
Don't forget about Jason Poe. Damian Jasso says, where was that play by Dwelly this whole time, and will Jimmy ever make that throw that far again? Why did it take this long for them to get Ross Dwelly involved? And are they going to forget about him? He just caught a 50-something yard pass. Are they going to go back to throwing passes to Werner and Croft? What the fuck? Sorry. Why? Is it because I keep hyping him up? I don't understand. Kyle, why, man? Take credit. I'll take credit too, but you can take credit as well.
Kyle outsmarted himself on that play to Warner, the drop pass. He's thinking to himself, okay, I'm going to put in a blocking tight end that they're never going to suspect to be wide open down the seam. As if anybody's going to suspect Dwelly to be wide open down the seam when you have George Kittle and Ayuk and Debo.
It's the same principle as
Just
Charlie
put in
Warner.
Dwelly.
The difference is that Dwelly will catch the fucking pass. I keep cursing.
Every time.
I'm so sorry.
He's
He's never dropped a pass in his entire career. That's a good
Nope.
streak. Kind of like Elijah Mitchell, who's never fumbled.
Yep.
Adam says, I love that talk about the mental aspect of the game. Really interesting. Great show, guys. Big fan of both of you.
Thank you, Adam.
It's an interesting game that I never played, but I've covered it for 12 seasons, and I'm learning. Football players.